U.S. Appeals Court for the District of Columbia refused to end the CDC Eviction Moratorium on Friday, and at the same time, 58% of small landlords have tenants that are behind on rent. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have bad news once again for landlords, and unfortunately, it's nothing that wasn't expected before. The U.S. Appeals Court for the District of Columbia decided that they are going to not end the CDC's eviction moratorium, and this means that landlords are going to have to push their case on to the Supreme Court. And that's obviously was very much expected, and we all knew that this was going to happen, especially since they didn't end it the first time. But still, I was hoping, there was hope in my heart that it would just end right now and it wouldn't go any further. And I also have a second article for you today, and it's all about how landlords, or small landlords in particular, are suffering throughout the eviction moratorium. But before I get into those articles, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of this appeals court decision, okay? If you're a small landlord and you're having trouble, leave a comment down below. Let's hear your story. I like to hear stories from other small landlords who have been suffering through all this mess. So the first article comes from theintelligencer.com, and it says, U.S. Appeals Court refuses to end CDC's eviction moratorium. A federal appeals court on Friday said a pause on evictions designed to curb the spread of the coronavirus can remain in place for now, setting up a battle before the nation's highest court. The three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia rejected a bid by Alabama and Georgia landlords to block the eviction moratorium reinstated by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention earlier this month. The landlords filed an emergency motion hours later with the Supreme Court, urging the justices to allow evictions to proceed. So immediately, as soon as their case got rejected by this appeals court, they filed for an emergency motion with the Supreme Court. So it's going to be up there with the Supreme Court pretty quickly, and I hope that they act very quickly to end this thing, because we need a decisive, a really good decision this time. We need a strong decision that says the eviction moratorium is unlawful and that it is completely thrown out. We don't need any, we're going to wait until it expires, Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah, and that's particularly at you, okay? Because that just doesn't work. They're just going to keep reinstating it, whether it's constitutional or not, and it'll basically be in place indefinitely. So the landlords will have to bear the financial burden of bad policy that is unlawful. The Supreme Court voted 5-4 in June to allow the moratorium to continue through the end of July, but Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who joined the majority, warned the administration not to act further without explicit congressional approval. As 5 members of this court indicated less than 2 months ago, Congress never gave the CDC the staggering amount of power it claims, attorneys for the landlords told the Supreme Court on Friday. In a short written decision, the appeals court panel said the court had rejected a similar bid, and a lower court also declined to overturn the moratorium. In view of that decision and on the record before us, we likewise deny the emergency motion directed to this court, the judges said in the ruling. Yeah, okay, it wasn't unexpected. I pretty much figured that was exactly what was going to happen. This appeals court, they didn't overturn the moratorium in the first place, and this is the second time they've heard almost an identical case, so they're just going to push it on out of their purview and up to the Supreme Court. Now, unfortunately, this means that landlords have to wait even longer before this ends. But if the Supreme Court acts in the way that they, seem to indicate that they're going to act, then this eviction moratorium will come to an end very soon. The Biden administration allowed an earlier moratorium to lapse on July 31st, saying it had no legal authority to allow it to continue. But the CDC issued a new moratorium days later as pressure mounted from lawmakers and others to help vulnerable renters stay in their homes as the coronavirus Delta variant surged. The moratorium is scheduled to expire October 3rd. As of August 2nd, roughly 3.5 million people in the U.S. said they faced eviction in the next 2 months, according to the Census Bureau's Household Pulse survey. So, yeah, a lot more information about everything that's happening, but just know for now that this thing is going to the Supreme Court, and landlords still aren't in the clear yet. So let's get over to the second story, and it's coming from the HeraldSun.com, and it says, landlords look for an exit amid federal eviction moratorium. A lot of landlords are selling those properties right now because they have no choice, okay? They are facing such a financial burden that if they don't sell, they don't get completely out of the business, then they're gonna drown, okay? They're gonna face bankruptcy, foreclosure, ruined credit. They don't want their personal finances to be completely destroyed because they're trying to be a free housing provider for these tenants. And that's not the way that any of this was originally meant to be. So let's see what this article says. When Ryan David bought 3 rental properties back in 2017, he expected $1,000 a month he was pocketing after expenses would be a regular sources of income well into his retirement years. He also was counting on the rent money from the properties in DuPont, Pennsylvania to help with the cash flow of his business buying and selling distressed properties, launched early last year. But then the pandemic hit, and federal and state authorities imposed moratoriums on evictions. The unpaid rent began to mount. Then, just when he thought the worst was over, the CDC announced a new moratorium lasting until October 3rd. A federal judge dismissed a legal challenge to the order last week, and the Federal Appeals Court dismissed the challenge again just yesterday on Friday. David, the father of a 2.5-year-old who is expecting another child, fears the $2,000 he's owed in back rent will quickly climb to thousands more. The latest moratorium was the final gut punch, said the 39-year-old, adding that he now plans to sell the apartments. I've had this internal struggle going back and forth. I've lost sleep at night, and I have now come up with a decision to sell and walk away. Think about all the landlords, the small landlords who are doing the exact same thing, okay? This guy, he's just like, hey, I'm done, I just can't handle this. This is too much to bear. I'm already out thousands of dollars. I'm going to cut my losses right now, get completely out of this business, sell these properties. And I imagine, especially in terms of small landlords, that's exactly what's happening. Like I said a little bit earlier in this video, 58% of small landlords have tenants that are behind on rent. That's more than half, okay? If they think that small landlords are going to be able to survive these eviction moratoriums, they're out of their mind. Without rent, we're out of business, said Gary Zaremba, who sold 40 of his properties in Ohio due to the moratorium and still has a quarter of his tenants in the remaining 100 buildings struggling to pay rent. He has helped some apply for rental assistance, he said. It's like a restaurant that doesn't have patrons, he said. I don't get the rent. I can't pay my maintenance staff. I have to lay them off. I can't fix the buildings and keep them in good repair. So that means they are going to get even worse off. I can't pay my taxes. Zaremba, who also owns a handful of properties in New York, sold some of his single-family homes to home buyers and some multi-family commercial apartment buildings to small investors. So yeah, this guy, he's a little bit bigger investor, but he's selling too, okay? And it's obvious why. A lot of small investors just don't want to deal with it anymore. And we're going to see more and more of this, okay? So there's going to be a consolidation. Bigger investors are going to be the only ones who are going to be able to afford to even be in the rental property business. We're going to have a much more limited supply. There's going to be high demand, obviously. And these renters, they're going to be just straddled in debt, unable to find places that are affordable to rent. And it's all caused by this eviction moratorium, okay? These government policies, they have other effects that they don't even realize. They think, oh, we're going to keep people in their homes, and that's complete crap, okay? It's not going to happen. These people, they would have been evicted regardless of whether there was a moratorium or not, because they are not the most financially responsible people. And, that's why they were unable to pay their landlords, even though there were expanded unemployment benefits, 3 separate stimulus checks, there were tax refunds, there's a very strong job market right now. They still weren't able to pay their landlords because these are not the most financially responsible people. And now landlords are sitting here and they're facing the consequences of this. They're, forced to sell their properties, and eventually it's just going to end badly for so many of the small landlords out there. So hang in there if you are a small landlord. I believe that the Supreme Court's going to toss this thing out, and we'll finally be able to resume evictions, and hopefully landlords will be able to become justly compensated once again.